Today on the Snack Covenant.
He's being forced into this role that he does not fit at all. He is too emotional, he's too impulsive, he doesn't follow orders, he's too much of a loner to function in the Redguns, and he can't cope with things going wrong. He just melts down completely every time the slightest thing happens.
So you see, this is where I disagree with you. I think if he gets help, which may take a long time, he could be a good mercenary.
Yeah, but maybe you shouldn't be a mercenary. Like, maybe you shouldn't be murdering people for money.
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you enjoy our content.
Hi, Sophie.
Hi, Sen.
Hi, everyone. And welcome to the Snack Covenant, episode 327. And today, we're gonna talk about Iguazu.
Who?
So I was looking at him like a holistic character,
Right.
but interestingly enough, you pointed out something else to me.
I pointed out, by which I mean I just described how the game is structured, that Iguazu technically has 3 different stories. And a little joke about Iguazu being forgettable, I think that's very deliberate, because to me the game is structured so that the first time you encounter Iguazu, the first time you play it, he doesn't seem significant. And then when he comes back and does become more significant, and he's so pissed off and frustrated that he's not recognized, it kind of ties back into the fact that, well, actually, no, I don't really remember who you were. I have killed you before and you're not significant.
I mean, I think honestly, by the third playthrough, the NG++, that's when I really started to notice Iguazu. Like, hey, this guy seems to appear here. He seems to have a real problem with me, too.
Yeah, that's like I was saying, it's structured so that Iguazu doesn't seem to stand out from any other of, like, the random pilots you run into.
Mm-hmm.
But then around NG++, he's getting frustrated. He's almost getting frustrated at the previous times you've played the game.
Yeah.
And then he starts becoming a more prominent character in it by just, like, refusing to stop being so salty, essentially.
Let's go through the 3 Iguazu timelines.
So the first timeline, do you want to call it Iguazu Prime?
Yeah. Okay, let me take out my... You know, Sophie, as Sophie knows, I've been taking notes. I have a whole notebook.
You have taken more notes on Iguazu than you did on the entirety of Elden Ring.
It's true.
That's not an exaggeration.
No. Okay, so this post-it. Iguazu Prime. Okay.
Are you deliberately picking a post-it to, like, stick it to him? You're so important I can fill a post-it note with my feelings on you, Iguazu. Okay, so Iguazu Prime. So the Iguazu Prime timeline is the shortest one. Basically, he shows up in the Attack the Gallia Dam mission partnered with Volta. After that, he shows up again in the Destroy the Iceworm mission. After that, he tries to kill you in the Underground Complex mission. You kill him, that's the end of Iguazu.
Yeah.
So in the second Iguazu timeline, which we're going to call Iguazu 616, instead of helping Iguazu and Volta attack the Gallia Dam, you betray them at the halfway point. This makes Iguazu very, very angry. He sends you some pissy messages.
You got a nice punch in. Go buy a lottery ticket. The Redguns are going to be first over the wall. Have fun watching from the sidelines.
Then the game plays out basically as normal. He shows up for the Iceworm mission, but then you get this extra Iguazu encounter in a mission where you're trying to stop a group of people hacking into Carla's data. So it starts out as just like a regular mission, and then as you're leaving, you figure out, oh, the people that were hacking into the data hired someone to help them, and it was Iguazu. So that's your second meeting with Iguazu in this timeline, and Iguazu's not expecting to see you there. So it's not like a deliberate, like, revenge. He's not stalking you yet, he just runs into you again. Because of your encounter with Iguazu there, he starts to get a little worried about you. He thinks you're a bit too strong. So in the Underground Complex Exploration mission, instead of running into Iguazu again, you run into Cold Call, who is a mercenary. Based on Cold Call's dialogue, he was hired by Iguazu to kill you. So Iguazu at this point is kind of like, he's a little terrified of you. He wants you dead, but he thinks he can't beat you.
He's bitter, he's terrified, he's angry, annoyed, jealous. Yeah.
And if you think that's bad...
No, actually, Sophie, I don't think about him at all.
Who are we talking about? So in the third timeline, what do you want to call this one?
The Nexus.
So in the third timeline, the Iguazu Nexus, Iguazu and the Multiverse of Madness, everything Iguazu all at once. It plays out similarly to the Iguazu 616 timeline, except it diverges when you get to the Stop the Coral Convergence mission. So when you get there, you're like, oh god, I have to fight fucking Ibis again. And then ALLMIND's like, no, I've got a better idea. You know how V2 Snail was mysteriously absent, even though they're all calling for him? You should go kill V2 Snail instead. So you begin fighting V2 Snail in the little sort of underground junkyard area that you had to escape from earlier. And about halfway through the fight with Snail, Iguazu shows up.
Yeah.
And he's very angry and he's trying to kill both of you. And then having killed Iguazu on that mission, you might think, well, that seems to be the end of Iguazu. But then, proceeding to the very end of the game, there's the reveal of who the final boss is. That they've been building up to for, 2.9 complete game cycles at this point. And the final boss is also Iguazu. So at that point, Iguazu has willingly allowed himself to be subsumed into this Gestalt AI thing called ALLMIND. And he openly says, he's abandoned his humanity, he's done it to kill you. So the final boss is kind of, it's supposed to be this, all these dead mercenaries that have sort of been uploaded into this single Gestalt entity, but functionally it's just Iguazu. So it's this sort of weird Jekyll and Hyde thing where it's flipping between the standard ALLMIND personality and Iguazu throughout the fight. And Iguazu is actually kind of responsible for allowing you to win. Because in the final fight, ALLMIND will summon 2 of those massive sea spider robots to help it fight. But what happens is when you get the Iguazu/ALLMIND AC down to half AP, he has this little freak out. And he overrides ALLMIND.
Yeah.
And that shuts the 2 sea spiders and air down. So it just becomes a one-on-one that is kind of more manageable than the 2v3 you had before. So basically the only reason you're able to beat that fight is because Iguazu is so angry at you, he won't allow anyone else to beat you.
Well, one correction, Sophie. Maybe the only reason you're able to win that fight is because that happens. I would have won it anyway.
But yeah, that's the 3 Iguazu timelines. He's my favorite character, I think, in this.
He's very complex. He's very human.
He's the most human-feeling character, I think. The thing about the characters in Armored Core 6 is that the way that they're initially introduced to you is pretty much how they stay throughout the game. Michigan is introduced as just the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket. That is how he basically lives and dies. Rusty is kind of always a cool dude until you turn on him and then he's reluctantly killing you, but still a cool dude. Snail is always a condescending prick. Whereas Iguazu, starts off as a very, insecure and, cocky person. And then as you progress through the various new game cycles, he kind of psychologically deteriorates. And he's the one who, if you look at why he's deteriorating and everything that's going, wrong with him internally, he is, I think, the best representation of, what that world and, what the life of a mercenary is actually doing to people.
Well, speaking of Iguazu, we actually have some in-game text that tell... We actually have some in-game text that tells a little bit about his past.
Yeah, this is, I think, really significant to looking at how he behaves.
Yeah, so I have here... You know how in AC6 we have essentially item descriptions, but they're presented as logs or, descriptions in the arena and...
Well, I feel like it's the other way around. I think it's you know how in Dark Souls there's logs, but they're presented as item descriptions. Armored Core 6 was what if they were just text?
Thank you, Sophie.
We're brains are so fried on Dark Souls that we refer to any in-game text as an item description.
Description, yes.
I picked up this book the other day and it's just pages of item descriptions. Look, they made it so you can just put item descriptions in this paper. You don't have to play reality to get them.
Oh, God. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sin.
The description I'm looking at says, a backstreet gambler, Iguazu, bet big and lost, and he was forced to undergo experimental fourth-generation augmentation surgery to pay back his debts.
Yeah.
In his new life, he quickly became to quarrel with Walter, his oftentimes partner in crime, Iguazu's. Not post-COVID. I'm not reading that post-COVID.
Recalcitrant. It's an adjective meaning someone who is quarrelsome and doesn't agree with authority.
His quarrelsome nature was such that one day he even picked a fight with the hero of Jupiter, who retaliated with such fury that Iguazu never quite looked the same afterward.
So I think the most significant line there is when they describe him as someone who bet big and lost. So the whole reason he is in the state he is in is that he is continuously digging these holes for himself, even way before he was an AC pilot, by just trying to get everything he wants right now. So it's not that he was a gambler, it's that he was a gambler who bet everything he had in the hopes that, like, there'd be one big payoff and that'd be it.
Kind of like his hoping to join ALLMIND, become this one big conqueror, or at least just kill us, and that'll be it.
Yeah, that is the thing, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you follow, like, more of Iguazu's sort of pre-AC6 life, like, he's in the Redguns for 7 years at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, he bet everything on whatever it was. He didn't win it. That was his attempts to, like, get everything he wanted right now. And because he didn't get it, he ended up in the Redguns for 7 years. So the reference to Iguazu being in the Redguns for 7 years is, like, I think significant because that's quite a long time to basically have Michigan constantly insulting you. Like, Michigan is just treating Iguazu like shit constantly. There's a little kind of glimmer that Michigan doesn't entirely hate Iguazu in the
Intercept the Redguns mission?
In the Intercept the Redguns, he's like, Iguazu sucks, but he's better than you.
He's worth 100 of you. Yeah.
So the fact Iguazu's been in that position for 7 years, to me, that's sort of like emphasizing that if Iguazu had more patience, if he hadn't tried to, like, win big that one time, 7 years later he wouldn't be in the Redguns. Again, the reason he's in the Redguns specifically as an AC pilot is that he's had this augmentation surgery.
Yeah,
which we know is sort of... Yeah, and he's fourth generation, which is, like outdated. Yeah, so he's fourth generation, which at this point is outdated.
Mm-hmm.
So he's stuck with this, like, outdated augmentations. He's in a job he basically can't quit, where no one respects him. And it's a complete dead end. Like, he doesn't seem to be able to leave or to really, like, do anything.
You know what's interesting about the fourth generation thing?
Yeah.
So, you know how ALLMIND says that 6 to 1 and air are, like, the trigger for the coral release?
Yeah.
And I was thinking, well, we're a Gen 4 generation and we have a voice in our head, and we're the central thing that can help release the coral. And ALLMIND is still needs us, you know? And Iguazu was in the same position. He was also fourth gen. He also heard a voice, but ALLMIND didn't pick him. He didn't have that mutation or whatever happened. He must feel really better about that too.
No, but that's a constant thing with Iguazu, that, like, he is pissed off specifically that you came from the same place as him and you did better than him. Because when you first betray him in the damn mission, he keeps calling it luck.
Mm-hmm.
Like, specifically calls it, like, you got lucky, that was a lucky shot. And then when you encounter him again in the grid, he is saying, like, you won't get lucky this time. Like, he won't accept that you're actually actually like succeeding against him like on an even playing field. There always has to be an excuse why he did badly.
Mm-hmm.
And I say like the point at which that begins to crack is when he sees you fight the ice worm.
Yeah.
Because that is the point where he's actually sort of in awe and he's like, oh shit, they did it.
You know what it makes me think of? I don't know if you've ever had experience with people who were in denial about something. The way you can try to break them out of it, or at least in my experience, was to like constantly try and present reality to them. And at some point, it would be like, it would click. They realize that, oh yeah, this is the truth. This is the reality. And yeah, maybe I am in denial about things.
Well, the other thing about Iguazu is when you meet him, he is extremely prideful of being in the Redguns, even though he is being treated like shit by the Redguns.
Oh.
It's like when you first meet him, you have been given a Redgun call sign.
G13.
Yep. And Iguazu's first interaction with you is he's like, who decided that this freelance is coming with us? Like, you're not a real Redgun.
Yeah.
And later in the mission, he straight up says, like, look, later on, the real Redguns, like me, we're going to actually, like, climb the wall. And what you're doing now is just target practice. And when we're done here, we're going to do even more. You're just, like, tagging along for the ride.
Do you know what I love about that mission? I don't know if love is the right word, but I was like, oh my god, Iguazu. So yeah, you're right. So he's being a bully to us, which is like, whatever. I'm just here to do my job, get my money, go back to Walter. We'll find some coral. I can buy my way out of this. Okay?
Yeah.
And he's like really trying to like get to me by being very mean. But then he's trying to do that to the point where he's actually revealing, like, I'm assuming secret plans that you're not supposed to just reveal to everyone that are coming up. That is the point at which Michigan calls in being like, hey, why don't you shut up?
Yeah.
He does it more originally. He's much more colorful and poetic.
Yeah. He's a true poet, Michigan.
Why don't you start a sewing club together and stitch that damn mouth of yours shut?
Makes sense for Michigan to lose it a little bit, because it's like, why are you telling this no one? Not this no one, but somebody who just joined us what we're about to do, which is like not something to
he's literally
about.
He's blabbing secret plans to make himself look better than you. Like that's it. It's very like Trump with the classified government documents, just like waving them in front of people. Look what I got.
Exactly.
Yeah, and also Iguazu like completely fails to grasp that, like, maybe that wasn't a good idea, because later on he's complaining that Michigan won't stop talking.
And you know the audacity, though? He's complaining on an open channel that Michigan hears. I was like, bro, I couldn't talk to my boss like that. What are you doing?
And it's interesting to, like, compare him to the way Volta behaves in that mission.
Yeah.
Because Volta is, like, also kind of a jerk, but he's not constantly trying to one-up you. Like, he doesn't seem as insecure. He's just like, there's one point where he's like, oh, how about that? You're not a total amateur.
Yeah. And also when Iguazu's like, why is this guy with us? Blah, blah, blah. Volta's like, look, it doesn't matter. We'll finish the mission. Don't worry about it. He's like almost trying to de-escalate. Yeah. And I feel like maybe that's what their relationship is like, where Iguazu talks crap and is like not very positive and gets in trouble with his mouth. And Volta is there trying to always like calm him down and de-escalate situations.
Yeah.
Which made me very sad, to be honest, when I found Volta's log later, where he perished in the wall mission. And, in his log, he's saying like, oh, Iguazu, come back. So clearly Iguazu left. Michigan's not that bad. And it made me realize that, like, they were friends, they were partners. And maybe because Iguazu wasn't there to have Volta's back is the reason why Volta got destroyed.
Yeah. The other thing about Volta is, like, when you betray them in the damn mission, they both respond in totally different ways. Mm-hmm. Which is that Iguazu has that very emotional, instantaneous, like, what the hell are you doing reaction? Like, he's freaking out.
Yeah.
Whereas Volta is a lot more level-headed and it's like, oh, okay, someone's paying you. Like, you're a mercenary. Someone must have given you a better offer.
Yeah.
He just says they bought you out.
Yeah. But the best reaction was from Michigan. Gun 13's acting dirty!
Gun 13's playing dirty!
Yeah,
And no,
I
and then
love
at the end of it, like, he's just yelling at Walter. He's asking Walter to pay the bills. So
Yeah,
it's like it's like they've like Walter has dinged his car or something, and he's just really pissed off.
exactly. Oh,
The thing about like the very ending of Armored Core 6 is it's sort of like it kind of implies that you're going to get sucked into some sort of gestalt entity regardless of what you do. But then the fact that Iguazu is able to like push back constantly is like a foil to that. That like Iguazu is able to overwhelm ALLMIND, but he's overwhelming ALLMIND just because he's such a like, emotional, angry, cowardly person who's just driven by this like obsession with revenge. And it's like those are quite negative feelings, but at the same time it's sort of showing you a glimmer of hope. That's like, if this guy can overwhelm like ALLMIND just because he's so pissed off, there's maybe hope that like, if the coral did spread and start like this symbiotic relationship with everything in the universe, maybe there's a way to reassert control over that. It's like the hopeful message for humanity is Iguazu.
Late at night, I think of you, your vision floods my mind.
one thing I want to touch on about Iguazu, and I talked to you about this before, is his emblem.
Yeah, it's a little beetle.
Yeah, well, the thing is, the first time I saw the emblem, I was a little confused. I'm like, that's a weird looking beetle. You know how Iguazu has kind of like a rectangle or whatever mech head with a light in the middle?
Yeah.
Well, the beetle has kind of a, I don't know, square rectangle head with a light in the middle. So at first, I associated the beetle head with Iguazu. And then when I looked at it closer, I'm like, oh, wait a minute, the ants are bringing the head. He's the head bringer. But I feel like this has something to do with Iguazu's kind of low self-esteem, to the point where, to me, his emblem, yes, it's picturing ants bringing a head, supposedly like a foe that Iguazu's ants have defeated. But when I first saw it, I kind of associated the decapitated head with Iguazu.
Okay, so the thing about Iguazu's emblem, along with what you said about the ants, is like it's a rhinoceros beetle. I think it's a rhinoceros beetle. The point is, it's a beetle that in Japan, like, kids will catch those beetles and make them fight each other. If you're curious, that's a plot line in JoJolion.
Is that another JoJo comic?
Yes, it is. You fake fan.
Okay.
And yet, Volta's emblem is also a beetle. And it mentions that they're constantly quarreling with each other, and I wondered if it was a little thematic thing where it's like they're like two like rhinoceros beetles or stag beetles constantly fighting one another.
Oh, yeah.
And the other thing that Iguazu says, which I think is very revealing about him, is when you beat him in the dam, his response is not just you got lucky, but it's go buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah,
because he just seems to view everything in terms of like, one day you'll get lucky and everything will be fine.
But you know the irony is that we're gun 13. That's the most unlucky number ever, Iguazu. How do you explain that? Going back to the things he tells us, sometimes when you get proficient in killing certain entities in Armored Core, you start killing them a little too fast.
Yeah.
So you have to adapt a technique where you either kill them slowly or just let them kill you in order to hear certain dialogue.
Oh, yeah.
And Iguazu's dialogue when he kills us is very funny. So you know in the Reach Coral Conversions mission?
Yep.
When you let him kill you, he's like, dead, you're finally dead. He's like so happy about it.
Yeah, he's just like, finally.
Yeah.
So speaking of tickets, if we then encounter Iguazu in the underground structure,
okay,
which is like our final Iguazu encounter for that pathway, he describes you as his ticket back above ground. So he's becoming obsessed with killing you because if he does, the bounty that is on your head will pay for him to finally get out of the Redguns. And I think this is where you learn quite a bit about Iguazu. Because he keeps yelling, like, it'll all be over when you're dead. So again, it's going back to that idea, like, Iguazu just sees, like, if I just do this one thing, it'll all be fine. So he's gone from, like, if I just put all my money on this bet and win, it'll be fine, It's like, if I just get augmentation surgery, it'll be fine. To if I just join the Redguns, it'll be fine. And now he's, if I just kill 621, I'll be fine. And the fact is, like, even if he did kill you, you know it wouldn't be okay. Something else would happen. Also, while you're fighting him, he is yelling that he can hear something ringing in his ears and voices and things, which is elaborated on later, but at this point in the story, he is blaming that on the surgeon that gave him the augmentations, and he's saying, like, that quack messed me up. So the impression you get as well is, like, Iguazu underwent augmentation surgery, but he couldn't even afford, like, a good doctor. It was some, like, weird back alley thing. And he's very aware that that has happened.
That type of stuff that makes him kind of like more of a sympathetic character. Because, you know, when things aren't going well, and he clearly didn't have the necessary, like, support system to guide him in the right direction, things just get worse and worse and worse. And it's not necessarily by his own doing. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily his fault that the doctor he goes to is not competent.
It is and it isn't, because, like, you get the feeling that, yeah, it's not his fault he could only afford an incompetent doctor, but at the same time, like, he probably could have cut his losses and just, like, not gone and gotten cybernetic augment. Because it's like, I think that it's oddly written, but they say that he was forced to undergo it. But you get the impression that, like, he's forced to undergo it because he went into debt gambling. So it's like I keep saying, he's, like, digging a deeper and deeper hole for himself. So it's like, he thinks he's gonna, like, get rich quick by gambling. It doesn't work. So then his response is, well, I'll pay off the gambling debt by becoming augmented. But that doesn't work. So then he becomes, I'm gonna pay off the debt by killing you, and that doesn't work. He's impulsive, and he wants what is in front of him kind of, like, right now in this very directly emotional way. That is presented as, like I said before in this discussion, like, the feelings that he has and what he expresses and everything, they're all quite negative. Like, he's angry and petty and vengeful and, like, insecure and, like, violent and impetuous. But at the same time, that is what allows him to overwhelm ALLMIND. Because presumably, like, when you're fighting ALLMIND, like he says, it's not just me that's in here. He calls them, like, all the dregs that you've murdered are in here as well. And I think the idea is, like, presumably, like, you know, the Vespers and Volta and everything are inside of ALLMIND now. But because they were a bit more calculating and a bit more willing to listen to, like, authority, and they were better at being mercenaries than Iguazu is, they integrate perfectly into ALLMIND, whereas Iguazu is, like, the word that ALLMIND uses is irregular. Like, the fact that Iguazu is a fucking terrible, like, person and a terrible pilot and a terrible candidate for the ALLMIND program is what allows him to resist it. It's interesting because if you described that arc to me, I would assume that was the arc of the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Mimi and I, we did an episode with Alex from Pen Pen Pals about Sekiro. And the thing about Sekiro is, like, the thing about Wolf's arc in Sekiro, if I can, like, really oversimplify it down, is that it relies on him making, like, a sort of emotional decision and not listening to orders. So in a sense, like, in that moment, he's not a very good shinobi. But in not being a good shinobi, he's doing the right thing. And Iguazu is like that, but instead of it coming from a place of, like, loving and respecting people, he's just so fucking angry and petty all the time. It's like some terrible, like, science fiction story where, like, a computer doesn't understand what love is and explodes, but it's like it doesn't understand what, like, being a piss baby is and explodes.
Aww.
Like, it can't cope with, like, it just can't cope with that level of pettiness and, like, anger and stuff. So it's a weird sort of story, I think, because it's like the negative aspects of this person almost end up, like, being what's strongest about them and allows them to, like, break away from this system that's absorbing everyone else. It's almost like him ejecting in the wall mission is, like, that's essentially what he does all game. Like, he's sent to attack the wall. If he attacked the wall, he probably would have died. but because he has this, like, impulsive, emotional, like, response where he's like, fuck, and he just ejects and bolts. He survives that, and then the same thing happens with ALLMIND, where because he's so, like, unwilling, like, he's, like they said, he's recalcitrant, because he's so quarrelsome and angry, and is so obsessed with, like, saving his own skin all the time. That's what makes him able to overwhelm ALLMIND.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Sophie, that's really cool. And as you're saying that, I actually had a thought in my mind that I had to Google. Let me read you something.
You have to Google your own thoughts.
What
was I just thinking?
No, it's
Is
it's
your
been a while.
computer ALLMIND?
It's been a while, so I didn't exactly remember it. So I just wanted to read you a little something. This is from a paper. Borderline personality disorder is a severe mental disorder characterized by pervasive pattern of instability in affect, cognition, self-image, interpersonal relationships, and impulsive behavior. Impulsivity and emotion dysregulation are core features of borderline personality disorder. Typical expressions of impulsivity in individuals with the disorder include substance abuse, spending sprees, gambling, reckless driving, risky sexual behavior, sudden relationship breakups, etc.
Yeah, absolutely.
Could he have borderline personality disorder?
I think so. I think a lot of the characters in this game have some sort of personality disorder. No, seriously, I think that's, like, a recurring theme. Like, Snail is, like, clearly, like, a narcissist, I guess.
Or superiority complex.
Yeah. And, like, Michigan is, like, doesn't seem to connect that anything around him is, like, actually affecting people. He just sees it as, like, it's like he's a football coach, but people are dying all around him. Yeah.
I mean, Michigan, honestly, we'll have to have an episode on Michigan because, like, on the one hand, when you read about him and you see certain things, it's like, he's not a good guy.
No.
But on the other hand, like, when you do the Michigan mission, where you go to his base to kill him, he's showing some signs of, like, really care about his people. For example, when you attack where he's at, yes, he's throwing hordes of people at you, but that's because he knows you're not okay and you will kill everyone and their only chance is to just attack you as a horde. And he's not sitting back. He's literally, because you took him by a surprise, he's literally getting his mech ready to get in there ASAP.
Yeah.
And once he gets in there, he's like, okay, you guys can follow me on the suicide mission or sit this one out. It's okay.
Yeah.
Like, he's not even making anybody feel bad. He's making, like, a joke here and there, like, go sit this one out, write it down in your diary. You guys will need more training. But it's like, it is. It's almost like he's living in this, like, fantasy where we're not actually mercenaries killing people. This is like training, football, sports.
Yeah, like, he calls it, like, a field trip and stuff.
Yeah.
It's field trips now, hunt an expedition!
And you know what? He actually remembers people by name.
And what they do is like, this is a resident mathematician!
Yeah, exactly.
Put that calculator down, pick up a rifle!
Yeah, but I was honestly really surprised when one of the mercenaries was talking crap. I think she said, like, oh, Iguazu, is that the guy who, like, pissed his pants and ran away? And he's like, Iguazu is 100 times better than you! And I'm like, wow, okay.
Yeah.
You know what I thought was, like, very interesting? Where I felt like there's hope for Iguazu. I'm assuming he got resurrected by the coral or whatever, so he's okay.
Yeah.
But the moment when you defeat him as the final boss, he kind of has a moment of honesty where he says, I always envied you.
Yeah.
Because before that, he's like, oh my god, you think you're so good and you always have everything and blah, blah, blah. Like,
yeah. The thing he keeps saying also is, like, you're laughing at me.
Yeah.
And you're not. But he's just like, I can tell that you are.
Yeah.
Because it's... No, that's his own inferiority speaking. Like, he's just as... He thinks little of himself, so he's assuming everyone else is, like, laughing. When, like, yeah, it's like, the Michigan thing is kind of sad, because Iguazu's like, everyone's laughing at me, you know, like, no one takes me seriously. And then Michigan's like, no, like, Iguazu is better than a lot of you.
Yeah. But also, you know what? Michigan even kind of praised Iguazu and Volta to their face, because after we kill Index, Michigan goes, oh, looks like my good-for-nothings are good for something.
Good for something. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like... It is a little praise.
Well, because you get the impression Michigan is doing that thing where it's like, I'm going to break everyone down and then I'm going to rebuild them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Except it doesn't work with Iguazu.
That's the thing. It works on some people, but not on other people. Michigan needs to, like, adjust his approach next time. Like, it needs to be more individualized, you know?
You've been hired as a consultant by Balaam.
what I need Michigan to do is watch all 3 seasons of Ted Lasso and try to do more of that. So, Sophie, you mentioned something earlier about inferiority.
Yeah.
And I actually had like a few headcanons that I was trying to like apply to Iguazu.
Headcanon, like Volta's Mac.
God. Yes. So I had like some headcanons where I was like, maybe we can apply this concept to explain Iguazu's behavior. So I want to share some of that with you, if that's okay.
Okay.
But obviously this is very like TLDR for funsies, you know?
We're talking about trauma for funsies.
Oh my god. No, I meant the concepts. Because we're going to talk, because I'm going to bring up actual concepts, but they're, like, you can't talk about these things in like a half an hour video in a meaningful way, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you can. No, all the psychology in 20 minutes.
Alright, so Sophie.
Yes.
You know Freud?
Yes. Which one?
We all know V1 Freud.
Okay, yeah.
But did you know that in the 1800s, there was another less known Freud, a neurologist? Yeah, he also wore a Mac as far as I know.
Okay.
Did a lot of cocaine.
Yeah.
But...
Is that what they called Carl back then?
Oh my god, he was a dozer!
It all makes sense.
And again, like everybody knows this, he's like the father of psychoanalysis, and I guess we've all seen the iceberg, you know, when you have like the id buried deep in the water with the ego and the superego like pointing out, and basically, like the idea is that like what your subconscious or the id wants is not always what the conscious allows, right?
Yeah.
And that creates like conflict and anxiety. Yeah. But to manage your anxiety, there are these things that may arise that are called defense mechanisms. And at times they're like really cool. Like there are defense mechanisms, according to Freud, where you can, you know, take your anger, aggression and like channel it into art or something. But other times you have defense mechanisms where like they can be good in the beginning, and then if you overuse them, they may be bad. Like, for example, denial. You know, it can be good because it can help you deal with extreme anxiety, kind of like short term, until you can, you know, face the situation and make adjustments. But if you're in denial long term, it's, you know, it may actually like hinder your life. Kind of like, let's say you have a gambling problem and you're in denial about it. You know? Long term, it's not going to turn out good.
So do you think G2 Nile is a reference to denial?
Do you know what?
What?
That's exactly the thought I had, and I'm like, oh, that's stupid. I'm not going to bring that up. But literally, G2 Nile, right?
Yeah.
Denial. Like, we know that the guns are named after rivers, obviously. Like, we're not saying otherwise. But yeah, I was looking at like what G2...
Michigan is named after a lake.
I'm sorry, I apologize. Bodies of water.
You know, someone's going to clip out the bit where we're like, G2 Nile, denial, and be like, look at these fucking idiots.
Oh my god. But, and also, like, you know, his Mac is deep down.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, I honestly, I don't think it is. I think we're, like, seeing things that aren't there, but it's interesting. Like, denial, Nile, deep down, what's going on deep down?
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
Also, you know, they say denial is not just a river in Egypt.
Yeah.
Okay, no, it's official Nile. G2 Nile is reference to denial.
Okay.
That's it, it's canon. So, I want to talk to you about a couple of defense mechanisms that I think Iguazu may or may not be using.
Yeah.
So, there's this thing called reaction formation.
Okay.
And it's basically doing the opposite of what you really, like, think or feel. What if Iguazu is completely in love with us, but he can't deal with those emotions, so reaction formation kicks in, and he wants to literally murder us.
No, but I think that is a big part of it, because he looks at you and he sees someone who's come from the same place as him and is surpassing him, and he tries to make it about luck. You doing well one time, you can put down to luck. And if you had later gen augmentations, he could say it was that. If you had, like, a better mech than him, he could say it was that, but ultimately, like, it's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, you are just surpassing him and he can't cope with it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was thinking, like, if you were in the Redguns, would they name you after a river near where you live? Because I looked it up and I'm like,
Yeah,
you would be, you would be Lawrence, which would lead to
Oh
all
my
kinds
God.
of confusion.
yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Redgun Lawrence. God. Thank you, Sophie.
It's the one reference to Lawrence that was like an accident.
Oh my god. Nothing is an accident. Miyazaki thought it all out.
No, he's like, I'm not going to fall back on my half a dozen repeated names. I'm going to look at an actual river in Canada. And he opens the atlas and he's like, fuck.
Fuck.
I would be Yarrawi.
Okay, that's a good one. I like that.
Yeah.
It's original.
Yeah, it's got a lot of shopping trolleys on it.
Now, Sophie?
Yes.
Another defense mechanism that could be in play here is displacement.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the one where, let's say, I don't know, your boss screams at you.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm going to punch out my boss. But realistically, you cannot do that. So instead, you take out your anger on someone else.
Yeah. Although in Armored Core, your boss can punch you out, as is established by Iguazu's relationship with Michigan.
Yeah, so I think maybe there's a bit of that going on where he really wants to, like, fight back physically against the hero of Jupiter. But literally, bro, it didn't work. So he knows he can't. He's not as strong. Yeah. So instead, he's trying to pick on someone who he thinks is weaker than him. And there's one last thing I wanted to bring up. So you mentioned this, inferiority complex.
Yeah.
That's actually not a Freud thing. That's an Adler thing.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, Freud and Adler did know each other. Like, they were colleagues at some point, and at some point not. And, well, we all know what an inferiority complex is, right? In my head, kind of like the head canon I have, when Iguazu was a child, because this is something that basically in normal development, you're not supposed to have an inferiority complex. Like, you're supposed to kind of, if you feel insecure about something, you're supposed to strive and overcome it, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes you don't. And what may happen is when you grow up, you will be self-conscious about the thing that you felt inadequate about as a child. And, you know, it will be the thing that kind of like hurts the most, you know? You will try sometimes to overcompensate for it, but unfortunately you may give up instead of striving. This can happen when your parents are not like necessarily supportive of you. So what I was thinking for Iguazu is that maybe when he was a child, he had a sibling, and let's say his father would always praise the sibling, but not Iguazu.
Yeah.
So Iguazu never gets over it. And so when he grows up, he's trying to become this great mech, right? To kind of overcompensate. And maybe at the same time, he sees Michigan as a father figure and he's trying to impress him. Yeah. But again, sometimes if you have inferiority complex, it like doesn't matter how well you do or how much people praise you. Like, you're not going to feel good. You just feel so insecure about yourself, like kind of outdated. Like, it doesn't matter what's happening.
Yeah.
And the other thing that happens is that makes it worse is 6-1 shows up, right? So you have Michigan who kind of fills the role of the father figure, and then 6-1 maybe filling like this role of the sibling that Iguazu may have been jealous when he was younger. And so you're recreating this dynamic that is probably really triggering to Iguazu.
Yeah.
And again, what happens is instead of like thriving and overcoming, he leaves, right? He gives up.
But like, in terms of giving up, he gives up, like, in a sense, but in another sense he refuses to. He won't let it go. It's that, like...
Yeah, that's the thing. He gives up, but he doesn't let it go. Yeah.
Because, like I've been saying, I think the whole deal with Iguazu is, like, he's just not someone who should be a mercenary. Like, he's really, really bad at it.
I don't know if he's bad. I think the deal with Iguazu is that he needs therapy. He needs to get his self-esteem to the level where he can live a good, fulfilling life.
No, but what I mean is, like, yeah, he should, but, like, part of that is not being a mercenary, because it's like he can't do it. He's not, like, he doesn't follow orders.
Like, he's not cut out for it type deal?
Yeah, that's exactly right. He's not cut out to be a mercenary. He's not, like... like he's being forced into this role that he does not fit at all. Like, he is too emotional, he's too impulsive, he doesn't follow orders, he's too much of a loner to function in the Redguns, and he can't cope with things going wrong. He just melts down completely every time the slightest thing happens.
Mm-hmm. So you see, this is where I disagree with you. I think if he gets help, which may take a long time, he could be a good mercenary.
Yeah, but maybe you shouldn't be a mercenary. Like, maybe you shouldn't be murdering people for money. Because, like, what I'm getting at is that he is bad at it, and, like, it just doesn't work for him, and he should quit. Like, you get the impression he has an image in his mind he is trying to live up to, and it is completely counter to who he is, and he cannot do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately what kind of ends up saving question mark, because the ending is a little weird. Saving people at the end of it, because ALLMIND is absorbing the mercenaries into itself. And then it absorbs into itself someone who is, like, the worst mercenary imaginable. And ALLMIND realizes too late, because ALLMIND straight up says, like, you were a mistake. You're irregular. You shouldn't be in here. He's like the mental equivalent of a computer virus is now inside ALLMIND, and it's just, like, wrecking it. Because everyone else, presumably, because, like, they knew how to follow orders, they had, like, they could detach themselves from it, they had, like, a mission to fulfill, they could function as mercenaries. That fits in with ALLMIND. Like, ALLMIND specifically is absorbing mercenaries into itself.
Yeah.
When it tries to do Iguazu is none of those things, and that's what ends up fucking up ALLMIND.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's kind of like a similar thing happens to Walter, not Volta, in the Liberator ending.
Yeah.
Where, like, Walter has been, like, re-educated. He's been, like, brainwashed and everything, and he's able to break out of that because he has that mission to accomplish.
Yeah.
Yeah, whereas Iguazu is like that, but it's just petty revenge.
Well, it's interesting that you say it, because, like we said earlier, at the end, Iguazu sort of admits, like, I was always envious of you. Like, there's a moment of honesty. Damn, Sophie, wow. But there's a moment of this clarity, like, realization, you know, that I thought was really quite beautiful. Yeah, and I think a similar thing happened to Walter at the very end, where he chooses not to shoot you, and he's like, oh, you made a friend. So it's this epiphany, this realization that came upon him that maybe I don't have to follow that path.
Yeah. You made a friend, brackets, who possibly harbors the doom of us all. But, you know, the friendship matters.
Okay, but that's another thing where, anyway, for me, for my interpretation, when Walter tells you made a friend, I don't think it's literally you made one friend heir. I think it's sort of the thing where he finally sees you as a human being. Because in the beginning, he's like, oh, you're a mercenary with a fried brain. Do what I say. Let's get that coral. Maybe you can buy your life back. And so as the game goes on, he actually grows to, like, see you as a human, because at some point he even tells, I think it's V to Snail, he's like, hey, show my hound some respect. You know? And I don't know, I guess we'll have an episode on Walter. I think, like, his arc is really beautiful, and again, I thought it was very touching where he chose not to kill me, because I'm like, finally he sees me as a person, not just like a reanimated corpse or something in a mech. I literally had a tear go down my cheek. I'm like, wow, Walter. Yeah. Anyway, Iguazu.
I feel like everyone has more of an arc and more agency than the protagonist, which is weird.
So, Sophie?
Yes.
Do you have any final words about Iguazu?
He's named after the Iguazu Falls. Because he won't stop crying!
Sophie, do the outro.
That was the Snack Covenant episode 327. Iguazu, the little mercenary who couldn't, but then because he couldn't, he could.
Thank you, Sophie.
Thank you, Sin.
And thank you everyone for listening, and see y'all next time.
Thank you to all the voices in my head that are laughing at me.
Ciao, Sue.
Ciao, Sue.